I used to believe the world was an equation, a series of logical inputs and outputs that, if you were smart enough, you could predict and control. My job is to find patterns in chaos, to stare at massive spreadsheets of data until the underlying story reveals itself. I build systems, I value order. Then my little sister Chloe came home for the weekend, and she torched that entire belief system with a single whispered confession. We were in the kitchen, the late afternoon sun streaming through the window, and she was staring into her tea as if the secrets of the universe were swirling in the steam. She told me about a party years ago when we were still kids playing at being adults. She told me about a boy we both grew up with, a charming, smiling boy named Ethan, who is now a celebrated local contractor, his face plastered on billboards all over town. And she told me what he did to her when no one was looking. A truth she had buried so deep she convinced herself it was a nightmare until a mutual friend, riddled with guilt, finally told her what he'd witnessed. In that moment, watching the single tear trace a path down her cheek, I felt the neat, orderly columns of my world collapse into a pile of meaningless numbers. The system was broken. Karma was a bedtime story for children. And I, a man who built his life on logic, found a new, cold, and brutally simple purpose. My rage wasn't a hot, messy fire, it was a glacier, silent and unstoppable. I spent a week watching Ethan from a digital distance. I saw his smiling photos with his beautiful girlfriend, his posts about charity work, his thriving business built on the lie that he was a good man. The police would be a dead end, her memory was fragmented, it was years ago, it would just be more trauma for nothing. So I did what I do best. I opened a new project file on my computer and I started building a different kind of system. I became a digital ghost haunting the edges of his life. I spent my nights not sleeping, but sifting through public records, social media histories, and archived web pages. I used my skills to peel back the layers of his carefully constructed life, and I found things. Small things at first: a discrepancy in a building permit application, an online review for his company that was a little too perfect, which I traced back to an account owned by his own mother. I found whispers of unpaid subcontractors, hints of cheap materials used on expensive jobs. Each piece of data was a brick, and I was building a prison for him, one he would never see coming. I barely spoke to anyone. My world shrank to the glow of my monitor, the click of my mouse, and the quiet sound of Chloe's television murmuring from the other room. The man I used to be, the one who believed in second chances and the good in people, he was dying. And I didn't mourn him. On a Tuesday night, exactly 1 month after Chloe's confession, I finalized my work. It was a perfect, elegant weapon. It was not an accusation of what he did to my sister, that was her story, her pain, and I would not use it as a public spectacle. My weapon was his own corruption. I packaged everything into 3 anonymous, encrypted emails. The first went to the investigative desk of the biggest newspaper in the state, with a subject line they couldn't ignore: the real price of a hometown hero. The second went to the state's tax enforcement division, detailing years of undeclared cash jobs and fraudulent expense claims. The third, my masterpiece, went to the corporate headquarters of the national hardware chain that had just awarded him a massive, exclusive contract for our entire region. I attached proof of him using their competitors' cheaper materials while billing for their premium products. Then, I closed my laptop, wiped the temporary hard drive, and went to make a cup of tea. It started 2 weeks later. A single article, then an avalanche. The tax audit froze his assets. The hardware giant sued him for breach of contract and fraud, a multi-million-dollar lawsuit that made national news. His clients, now seeing the cracks, started talking, and the stories of cut corners and shady practices flooded the local forums. His billboards came down, his business imploded, his girlfriend left. He was ruined, buried under a mountain of his own greed and deceit. And he would spend the rest of his life wondering which of the dozens of people he had cheated had finally brought the hammer down. He would never, ever know it was for Chloe. Last night, Chloe and I were watching a movie. She leaned her head on my shoulder, something she hadn't done in years, and whispered, "Thank you." I knew she wasn't thanking me for the revenge. She was thanking me for believing her. I felt a flicker of the old me, a warmth in the icy glacier of my heart, but it didn't last. After she went to bed, I returned to my office and powered on my computer. I opened a locked folder, the one that held my last project, and next to it I created a new one. I typed in a new name. It was the name of the friend who had stood by at that party, the one who had watched what Ethan did and did nothing at all. My work wasn't an act of revenge. I had simply found a flaw in the system, a bug in the code of the world, and I was going to fix it.